If there's one thing the set designers on Snowpiercer want us to know about Wilford, it's that he really, really loves art. By my count, his personal car has 9 paintings in it, not to mention carvings and statues, music, tablets, and a lot of books. I like to believe that some of them are originals that museum and gallery curators stole and gave to Wilford in order to buy their way onto Big Alice. Every piece of art in Wilford's car tells us something about Wilford, and I'll be analysing as much of it as I can in order to learn more about the character and maybe make a few predictions about his future. I'm going to be releasing this video in 2 or 3 parts. This part will focus on Wilford's paintings. First up is this bad boy, which hangs next to Wilford's bathroom door. There's a cool little story behind this one. According to Reddit, it was done by one of the show's concept artists, link in the description. It depicts Cain and Abel, and is meant to look like it was done by Francisco Goya. They even forged his signature. God favoured Abel over Cain, and so Cain decided to kill his younger brother out of jealousy. Now, I might be reaching here, but I think this could be foreshadowing a showdown between Alex and LJ. With her parents gone, Wilford is the closest thing to family that LJ has left, and we saw Alex giving her some jealous looks in episode 2. They seem pretty tight in episode 4, but let's not forget LJ is a serial killer. I find LJ's character really interesting, and I don't want her to get killed off, but if Alex does her in, at least I get to say I told you so. Next is this painting here, depicting the Tower of Babel by Tobias Thracht, painted around 1610. The Tower of Babel is a story about a group of people who decide to build a tower leading up to the heavens. God put a stop to the project when he caused all of the people to speak different languages, meaning they couldn't communicate with one another and they became scattered. The story is a warning against the hubris of men who try to get on a level with God. In that way, it's kind of weird that Wilford has this painting. Wilford sees himself as the god of this new world, and if I were him, I'd feel really uneasy every time I looked at this painting. As I've said in a previous video, Big Alice's unity is their greatest strength, and biggest advantage against the divided Snowpiercer. Wilford keeps going on about what a strong team they are. He tells Melanie, "My crew know life below zero. We've run a lot of rough miles together." This painting of the Tower of Babel could be foreshadowing that something will happen that will cause Wilford's crew to turn against each other. Then there's this terrifying painting of Saturn devouring his son. This one actually is by Goya. In Greek and Roman mythology, Saturn's mother prophesied that his children would one day overthrow him, so he did what any normal father would do and ate them. But, as is always the case in Greek mythology, you always seal your fate by trying to avoid it. His children grew to adulthood in his stomach, escaped, and chopped their dad to bits. Wilford does seem to be a little worried that Alex will turn over to Melanie, and it's possible that he will become increasingly paranoid and end up driving Alex away. He's always cruelest to her, it seems, when she's showing fondness for Melanie. Or maybe it's not about Alex at all, but about Jupiter the dog. Jupiter is presumably named after the Roman god who was one of the children of Saturn that ended up killing him. Jupiter is definitely being set up to maul someone, and it could very well be Wilford. What's really disturbing about this painting is that it hangs above Wilford's desk, the desk he has his phone and microphone on. Anytime he's making an announcement to the train or talking to his officers, he's looking right at this painting. Next is Napoleon Crossing the Alps by Jacques-Louis David. He did 5 different versions of this painting. I believe this is the Belvedere version. It's not the original though, it's way too small. There's a lot going on in this painting, so I'll be brief. Firstly, by crossing the Alps, Napoleon was able to perform a surprise attack which gave him victory at the Battle of Marengo. This is very similar to what Wilford did in order to get the jump on Snowpiercer. In episode 1, Melanie says to him, "You took a shortcut. You came over the Rocky Mountain test track, didn't you?" I like to think that Wilford was looking at this painting when he came up with that plan. In the bottom of the painting, you see the names Bonaparte, Hannibal, and Carolus Magnus carved into the stone. Carolus Magnus means Charles the Great, who is more commonly known as Charlemagne. Hannibal and Charlemagne both led armies through the Alps in the past, and this is the artist's way of drawing a comparison between Napoleon and these 2 great military leaders of history. And now we can add Wilford to that list. Well, he didn't cross the Alps, but it's probably close enough in his mind. In this painting, Napoleon's horse is rearing and wild-eyed, yet he sits it easily and looks completely calm. The horse is thought to be a metaphor for France itself, and is a comment on Napoleon's great competency as a leader. This is Wilford to a T. He has the crew of Big Alice firmly under his control, and when he goes on board Snowpiercer in episode 2, he has the people eating out of the palm of his hand. Finally, we see that Napoleon's right hand is ungloved. Some people have said this is to show that while he is a great military leader, he is at heart a statesman. I think this is also true for Wilford, and it sort of makes him the opposite of Leighton, who had the strength to conquer the train, but let's be honest, is doing a terrible job running it. Now onto this painting of Julius Caesar by Adolphe Yvon. This is thought to depict Caesar's crossing of the Rubicon, which started a war that ended with him ruling Rome. The Rubicon was a river that was the northern border of Italy at the time. Basically, whenever a general entered Italy, by law, they were required to disband their army or cede control of it to the local governor. Caesar did neither, and it was declared an act of treason and rebellion. After that, there was no turning back for Caesar or his troops. To this day, crossing the Rubicon is used as a way of saying crossing the point of no return. Caesar was subject to capital punishment for what he did, but so was every troop who followed him. Yet still, Caesar was able to lead the entire 13th Legion into rebellion, which is a testament to how inspiring a leader he must have been. Wilford crossed his Rubicon when he latched Big Alice onto Snowpiercer, and now that the docking mechanism is broken, there really is no turning back for him. Wilford also sees himself as an inspiring leader, just like Caesar. In the painting, Caesar holds a globe in his hand, showing that he wants to conquer the world. Wilford sees Snowpiercer as all that's left of the world, so he certainly resonates with this. Also, quick side note, I'm pretty sure this spooky lady is meant to be Ate, the goddess of ruin, which is a reference to Mark Antony's line in Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar. And Caesar's spirit, ranging for revenge, with Ate by his side come hot from hell, shall in these confines with a monarch's voice cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. That's not really relevant, I just thought it was cool. When we first meet Wilford, he's sitting in his armchair, and behind him is Henry Fuseli's The Nightmare. This painting was done in 1781, and at the time it was quite shocking, mostly because of its sexual overtones, so it became very popular. So in the painting, we've got our sleeping woman, we've got red sheets, probably meant to evoke blood, we've got a black horse, which is a sort of visual pun, nightmare, get it? And we've got this little guy, who's an incubus, which is a sort of demon that folks used to believe was sent by the devil to violate women who slept alone. A few years before doing this painting, Fuseli had fallen in love with a woman named Anna Landholt, but she didn't feel the same way, and her family didn't like him, and she ended up marrying someone else. Critics have theorized that the sleeping woman in this painting is meant to be Anna Landholt, and that the incubi, get this, is Fuseli himself. I mentioned in a previous video that I believe that Wilford had feelings for Melanie, which likely caused her betrayal to hurt all the more, and when they're reunited in episode 1, Wilford seems torn between wanting to woo her and wanting to hurt her like she hurt him. My point is, I bet Wilford thinks of Melanie every time he looks at this painting, and maybe that's why he put it behind his armchair, so he wouldn't have to see it when he was trying to relax. Or maybe he wanted Melanie to see it behind him when they first met, his sort of way of saying, you hurt me, and now I'm going to hurt you. I guess hell hath no fury like a Wilford spurned. Painting number 7 is called Venus and Cupid. It was done by an unknown artist at a French school in the 18th century. Notice here that the original doesn't have a background, but the one in Wilford's card does. I assume someone working on the show painted the background in, but I have no idea why. As I'm sure most of you know, Venus is the goddess of love, beauty, and desire, while Cupid is the winged god of attraction, who makes people fall in love by shooting them. His Greek counterpart is Eros, whose name basically means romantic love. When Alex calls Audrey Wilford's paramour, Wilford gets angry and says, "Don't say that word. She's a poem, you hear me? A witchy bird of grace that holds the soul of the train. She's a key." Wilford obviously has a weird obsession with Audrey, and the painting is positioned so that he sees it when he's in the bath. It likely reminds Wilford of the time he and Audrey shared a bath together, which his sick mind probably perceives as a fond memory. In the painting, Cupid is reaching up for his magic arrow, by which he wields his power, but Venus is holding it away from him. Wilford loves to control people, and Audrey is probably the only person in the world he allows to dominate him. I also think it's foreshadowing Audrey being a key obstacle in Wilford's quest to retake Snowpiercer. I haven't been able to identify these last two paintings, and I'm not holding out much hope for the one on the left, but if anyone can tell me what the painting on the right is, please do let me know, and I'll analyse it in a future video. And before you take to the comments, no, that's not a mirror on the left, it's definitely a painting. Now I'm going to finish up by talking about the stuff on Wilford's desk, and I'll analyse Wilford's other art in another video. As we know, the desk's middle drawer contains a record player, which allows Wilford to play music directly into the intercom so that his crew can hear it. I thought this was cool because it sort of combines art and pragmatism. It's obviously important to Wilford that the record player be near the microphone, and keeping it in a drawer is a great use of space. It reminds us that everyone in this world needs to be utilitarian. Their space is very limited, and even Wilford isn't immune to this. He also has a framed picture on his desk. We can see a figure, presumably Wilford himself, standing behind a podium draped with the American flag. The figure's arm is raised, similar to Napoleon's, and it's possible they're making the three-fingered W sign that Wilford makes in episode 2. If I had to guess, I'd say this could be the launching of Snowpiercer, but honestly it could be any of the big moments for Wilford Industries. In episode 3 of season 1, Melanie has a recording of Wilford saying he's not one for speeches. But she was able to take recordings from all the speeches he's given and cobbled together a new speech entirely, so I think it's safe to say he was joking. One cool theory could be that Wilford is giving a speech at Yale the year Melanie graduated. The other noteworthy thing on the desk is a red telephone. This is likely a reference to an urban legend about a red telephone that world leaders used to communicate with each other during the Cold War. Leighton did say in episode 1 that this was going to be a long, cold war. In the film, Wilford uses a phone to communicate with his spies across the train, and he could very well be doing the same thing in the show. Also on his desk, we can see Wilford's notebook that we see him writing in episode 3. It's curiously thin, and I'd imagine he's filled up a lot of them in the 7 years since the freeze. In this shot, we can make out the words tropical, the, capacity, and hypothesis. So we can guess he's writing something about the train, but it's hard to say for sure. These two thingies kind of look like hourglasses. In this shot from Kevin's death scene, they appear to have sand in the top segments, indicating that Wilford recently flipped them. Or maybe they're not hourglasses at all. And finally, there's this thing. And I've got no idea what this is. If we get a better look at any of this stuff in later episodes, I'll be sure to include it in part 3. Well, that's all for today, lovely passengers. I hope you enjoyed the video. I certainly enjoyed making it, and I'll see you in the next one.